make all the noise you possibly can for the leader of the People's Party of Canada and the next Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Maxime Bernier.
They say you can tell a race is close when the federal leaders start showing up in the riding.
I can feel it too.
And here on the lawn in front of New Brunswick's legislature on this late summer weekend, Maxime Bernier, leader of the People's Party of Canada, drops by. Perhaps to pick up the votes he feels could very well be available.
A lot of people don't know that we exist.
Yes.
Don't know that the PPC are boycotted by the mainstream media.
Although it's true the People's Party of Canada is an outsider here, Bernier could be right about something. There could be new votes to be had here, thanks to recent developments concerning Liberal candidate and former Green Party rising star Jenica Atwin, who's campaigning just around the corner this Saturday morning at the Fredericton Farmers Market.
Yeah, so I mean in Fredericton it's a tradition for the Member of Parliament to be available most Saturday mornings at the market, to sit here, have breakfast and be available for conversation or comments. People just stop by and say hello, so it's a pretty neat thing here in Fredericton, and I hope to continue that tradition.
Atwin is stumping for Trudeau today, but 3 months ago she was the only Green MP east of Vancouver.
Right, that act that you made of bolting from there to there to show up and talk to a bunch of people who were absolutely no point in talking to other than because you liked them, they were going to vote for you, right?
And then in June, with an election in the air, she crossed the floor of Parliament and joined the Liberal Party.
What's happening is the unfolding of one of the most interesting races, I think, in this election campaign. We have a very unusual circumstance of one of 3 Green MPs in Canada being from Fredericton. Jenica Atwin won in a really close call in 2019. She only got about 33% and change against 31% for the Tory and 27 and change for the Liberal incumbent. So it was a squeaker, and nonetheless, I don't know anybody who was not convinced that the Green MP, Jenica Atwin, would win re-election easily in 2019 were an election to be called. But in early June, to everyone's surprise, she changes party affiliations and announces herself to be a Liberal. And so now she's running as a Liberal, and all bets are off. I think it's a new situation entirely.
If it was a tight race between 3 parties last time, it's an even tighter race between the same 3 parties only 2 years later. 3 women competing for 1 seat. For her part, Atwin has no regrets about crossing the floor. Jenica, you were a Green MP. You were one of the first elected in the country. So why have you moved to the Liberal Party?
Well, I was very proud to be elected as one of the first Greens outside of British Columbia, and it was an incredible experience for me. But for me, there was no future at the party because of various issues. I really thought that being in government is an opportunity for me to have the voice of Fredericton heard on issues that I maybe weren't able to be effective on before with kind of a smaller team, smaller resources. I've been so overwhelmed with the support and encouragement that I've received with the Liberal Party and with my new colleagues and new friends, new family. So I'm very happy, I'm very at peace, and I'm very proud to be running for the Liberal Party of Canada.
Okay, folks, let's go.
Nicole O'Byrne, a professor at UNB Law School, is more than willing to march right into the Green seat Atwin just vacated. Today she's marching with a union representing frontline workers who are demanding provincial recognition for working on the front line during the COVID pandemic. Your opponent, your Liberal opponent, you probably worked for her in the past, organizing. She was a Green Party MP. She left the party because of the leadership. You stepped in, same leadership. How do you address that?
Well, first of all, Jenica and I are friends. And I did help her get elected in 2019, and we share a lot of the same values. She's never fully explained why she's left. We're still kind of waiting to hear the details on that. It might be my background as a as a lawyer, that when things get tough, that's when you lean in. You don't just sit back. And so I see some of the problems in the Green Party, and I think, well, I think it's actually time to roll up my sleeves and help out and not just step back and wait for other people to address those issues. Now, what I've learned over the last month since I became the candidate is that I don't think the problems are as serious as they might appear. I think there were some personality conflicts. The party has a fairly robust constitution. They've got good processes when it comes to governance. These processes are working their way through. Do I wish that it was all resolved right now before I was campaigning? Yes, I do, but there's no doubt in my mind that it is working its way through. The party's been very helpful. They've been training our volunteers. We have a phone bank. They have a system called G-Vote. Their communications people have been ready for us to ask questions and whatnot. So we've been getting a lot of support from the Central Party. So they're operating quite well, and they're supporting a lot of the local candidates in a meaningful way. So what I was expecting to be a lot worse, I've discovered in the last month is I don't think the situation is as dire as we've all been led to believe, but the story has all yet to come out. And I don't think that the people in Fredericton who voted 2019 for the Green Party, that their values or the way they see the world has changed fundamentally. So I've stepped forward to put my name in, and we're getting a lot of support, and I'm having a great time on the campaign trail.
And in this election, we cannot forget the Conservative candidate, Andrea Johnson. She came a very close second in 2019. 2 years later, she expects to come first.
It is really close. However, what I'm hearing from the voters is that more than anything, and I mean, they're not talking about floor crossing at the doors. They're not talking about any of that noise. Canadians, and especially the folks of this riding, really and truly want a government that has a plan. They want someone that can articulate that plan and execute on that plan, and Canada's Conservatives have that plan. And so when I start to talk to people about, when they have the questions about, well, this is an issue for me, or, you know, I'm a young professional, my wife's a nurse, I'm an engineer, but we can't afford to have all three of our kids in daycare. You know, to be able to pull specific, tangible, key items out of our platform that resonates with those folks at the door, that's what they're looking for.
Since Confederation, this riding has traditionally shifted back and forth between the Conservatives and the Liberals. But in 2019, the Green Party, riding a provincial wave, took the seat. Tom Bateman says the Greens would have held that seat easily now, but the floor crossing means the Green Party could be at a disadvantage this time around.
They do have something else going strongly in their favor, and that is that in 2014, in the New Brunswick provincial election, David Kuhn, who's a well-known and widely respected environmentalist, won a seat for the Green Party in the provincial legislature, and his riding is Fredericton. So his riding overlaps almost completely with the federal riding. He stumped for Jenica Atwin very, very enthusiastically in 2019. He bears a good share of the responsibility for her win in 2019. When she crossed the floor in June, he publicly said that he was profoundly disappointed in this outcome.
He was.
It was a huge mistake on her part, a serious error. A lot of people felt betrayed, both people who helped work to get her elected, of course, who put themselves all in to get her elected, as well as the voters who voted for her as Jenica, the Green candidate, for a Green member of Parliament. And so that's kind of the sense at the door. Around here, there's a lot of upset people.
Well, I expect we're going to have a minority government somehow. Locally, I don't know. It's a toss-up. It depends where all the Green Party votes go, whether there's a strong enough support on the Liberal side to carry those votes or not. I think it's a toss-up as it has been the last couple of elections in Fredericton.
Fredericton is mainly an urban riding. Many of its 70,000 or so eligible voters are civil servants or healthcare workers in this government town. It's also home to Canadian Forces Base Gagetown in nearby Oromocto. But the riding has an aging population, a doctor shortage, a nursing shortage, and long wait times. So then it's no surprise that healthcare is showing up as a major issue at the door for all candidates.
So, I mean, of course, in the Atlantic, it's healthcare. Healthcare has to be number one. You know, nothing else matters if we don't have a healthy population that's focused on their well-being. I'm hearing that a lot at the doors. You know, I've run into many people who are either in remission for cancer, currently battling cancer. I even knocked on a door where someone had just returned from their radiation treatment. So healthcare is top of mind. We've also just come out of a pandemic, so people are very much considering, you know, what's the recovery look like for our economy as well. So that's really happening, you know, in the conversations that we're having.
And the other thing is healthcare. I heard so much about people. A healthcare system here is in crisis. There's really no other word for it. 12-hour waits in the emergency room, not being able to get a family doctor for 4, 5, 6 years. Okay, being on surgical wait lists for 2, 3, 4 years. I myself am on a wait list. It's now been 18 months for something that could be quite serious. And my family doctor is quite frustrated because she can't get me to a specialist. My story is not unique. Almost everyone we've talked to has had some kind of problem with the healthcare system. So we need to address the cost-sharing formula. New Brunswick's not getting its fair share. I'll tell you why. The Harper government made healthcare funding based on per capita. So when you have smaller populations, that's a real problem because you still need the basic level of infrastructure to run a healthcare system. And then the formula doesn't take into account our demographics in New Brunswick, which we have an older population, okay, and a less healthy population.
Andrea Johnson says she's also hearing about something else at the doorsteps.
Spending the debt is probably number one. People are really concerned. I didn't hear this on the doors in 2019, not in the overwhelming sense that I'm getting it now. And healthcare and mental health. Those would be the two primary, the three primary. And mental health, to me, and healthcare should be one unit. So those would be jobs as well. There's a lot of small business owners in this riding, and they are struggling, and they're struggling hard. They can't get people to go to work. And so we've got restaurants and a number of businesses in the tourism and the service industry that have reduced their hours significantly because they can't get staff.
The Green Party knows this seat is important to their federal future, and they want to hold on to it at all costs.
And then I feel, okay, we are doing something really big here in Fredericton. We're doing something really important. And of course, Jenica's win, or the Green Party win in 2019, wasn't an isolated incident. David Kuhn, who's the leader of the provincial Green Party here, he won his seat in 2014 by 337 votes. And I was on that team. And I'll tell you, we had one heck of a victory party that night because everybody came together and realized you can vote your values, you can vote for your vision of the future, and get an excellent representative like David Kuhn. And for the last 7 years, he has been an extraordinarily effective member of the Legislative Assembly. People who had never voted Green before voted for him in big numbers in 2018, and they elected 2 more Green MLAs in 2018. And then David Kuhn won again in 2020 with more votes than all his opposition combined. So there's a lot of support for green values here and a green vision going forward. And in fact, I'd go so far to say it's not really the Green Party in Fredericton, but it's a green movement in Fredericton. And people like to be represented by someone like David Kuhn, who's doing a good job and representing their interests. So I'm hoping to be the equivalent of David Kuhn in Ottawa, where I can really represent my constituents on the floor of the House of Commons and in the media like I'm doing right now.
Everybody knows that the Green Party at the top is in some kind of malaise, and the leadership of the party is in question, and one wonders how much of a downstream effect that is going to have on the local candidate races. My guess is that the malaise at the top is not going to have a huge effect on voter choices in the ridings and in Fredericton in particular. because Green voters are they're interested in the idea and not so much on the mechanics of the leadership back rooms and what the council is saying and so on and so forth. So I'd say by September the 20th, it'll be about local issues, about the standing of Jenica, about people's evaluations of floor crossers.
Some have criticized the timing of this election, with Canada facing a fourth wave of COVID-19.
I think more than anything, Canadians want stability. And so if this election can deliver us some stability, I think it'll all be worth it. And I haven't heard much at all at the doors about it, being upset with the timing of the election. I think most people understand the nature of minority parliaments and kind of how things get in the House. Decorum started to break down. It was difficult to pass certain bills, and we've got lots of work to do. So I'm really pushing that it's about stability. And so, our team's ready to do what we need to do to get to that September 20th, benchmark and do what we can for the voters of Fredericton.
The St. John River runs right through the middle of New Brunswick's capital city, and it defines Fredericton. But that river's also been known to overflow its banks. In fact, 2 historic back-to-back floods in 2018 and 2019 saw this river flood to historic levels, 8.5 meters or 27 feet. That has climate activists worried that climate change is going to threaten the citizens of this city more often.
Well, I think the change in mentality is coming because of the scope of the crisis. People are starting to realize that if we don't start acting now, and we should have maybe acted 30, 40 years ago, but right now we need to act. Change in mentality, I think, is happening.
On the climate, for us, we look at Canada as its entirety, and individually we know in this country we're producing more carbon emissions than what we should. Individual households, I think we all need to start to do better on our own, as well as in the bigger picture. I mean, you look at what we contribute to the overall global emissions, it's minuscule. So what leverage do we have, or how can we influence those other countries? I mean, China's opening up a coal mine a week. For us here at 1.6% of the global emissions contribution, we could be perfect, and we're not going to make a significant impact. So part of our plan is looking at how do we take the existing situation, knowing that we are going to be taking petroleum out of the ground for a long time to come, transitioning off of fossil fuels for sure. But how do we do what we need to do for Canadians and the rest of the world more responsibly? Carbon capture and storage. There needs to be significant investments in that.
As a Green MP, the environment would be like number one for you. But now, as a Liberal, what are you going to do to save the environment?
Well, that's a great question. So, I'm taking all of those core values with me, that when I ran in 2019, the same things are important to me. And when I think about climate, when I think about environmental stewardship, I also link it back to health as well. So I'm putting that as my top priority because it's really all encompassing. But of course, I want to be that loud voice. I disagree with TMX, for example. I really want fossil fuel subsidies to end as soon as possible. I want to make sure that we're reducing our energy consumption, and then we can talk about other ways to really reach our energy needs. I want to diversify. Fredericton has amazing capabilities for geothermal, wind, solar. So I'm really excited to be that loud voice, for Fredericton, hopefully within government. So I'm very excited about that opportunity.
The Fredericton riding is home to 2 First Nations communities, St. Mary's First Nation and the Oromocto First Nation. And that means the need for reconciliation is reverberating at the doors too.
How to effect meaningful reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, how to really meaningfully address the calls to action. We're hearing that from a lot of people. We do have an urban reserve in Fredericton as well, so there's a lot of connections between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous community.
Well, my husband is from Barb First Nation, Willamogadug, my children as well. So obviously it's deeply personal for me to ensure that Indigenous reconciliation, truth before reconciliation, is a key priority for all Canadians. You know, as non-Indigenous peoples, it's hugely our responsibility to ensure that we're doing all we can to repair that relationship. And again, we think about residential school survivors, that intergenerational trauma that's still being experienced. There's so much work to do, and I really do hope to lend my skill set, my expertise, and again those local Indigenous voices from Fredericton into that conversation.
Now, is that an issue that you're actually hearing at the doorstep? People in Fredericton writing are telling you that they want reconciliation?
It absolutely is an issue that I'm hearing at the doors. And we also have 2 Indigenous communities in the riding, so Ormukta First Nation, St. Mary's First Nation, large population as well. But specifically in this downtown Fredericton core, people are acutely aware. And I think it comes with, being a university town. People are educated, they're in the know, they're aware of what our history, what our present time society and some of the issues that we're grappling with. So I'm happy to see that. I'm proud of our community for that awareness. So I hope to be, again, their strong voice and representative to make sure that that's something that's being talked about across the country.
A lot of our platform, and I'm really proud of it, is a lot about partnerships. And I've had a number of conversations with the local chief here, Alan Polches of St. Mary's, and it's about partnerships. It's not about control. It's about they want to be at the table an equal partner. And I mean, that's not difficult. We're looking at right now, there's the legal process has started to look at changing the name of the St. John River to the Willistic River. And that's something that's part of that Truth and Reconciliation report that's very important to them culturally. So there's a number of items that could have been done.
But there's another very important vote that these candidates are trying to attract this fall. With 2 universities and an estimated 12,000 students, all parties hope that translates into 12,000 student votes. But this election, there are fears it won't. Elections Canada says it did not have time to arrange for on-campus voting for the first time since 2015. Cordell Walsh is president of the UNB Fredericton Student Union.
Well, it's really important for students to stay engaged because, we're electing a government that's hopefully going to be in power for up to 4 years, and that's a long time. That has major implications on the amount of funding through students' loans you may be receiving, various other government programs. Affordable housing is definitely an issue, and one of the big promises from political parties that I've been seeing is plans for how many homes are going to be built to combat the housing crisis. That's a major issue for students and something that students should be thinking about long term. So it is difficult, and I do understand where some students may be coming from in feeling disengaged because of the difficulty of trying to vote, but ultimately it's so essential that students stay engaged because this is the next 4 years of all aspects of life that can be impacted.
Just speaking from experience, when I was 18, I think the biggest hurdle probably is just transportation. I think I had maybe 1 or 2 friends at that age who even had a car or could drive, and so it's a different city, so I won't speak to that, but I just, if it wasn't on campus, it would have been harder to vote, and I would imagine a lot less likely to vote, to be honest. So
those students living off campus have a nationwide problem to worry about: affordable housing. It is an issue affecting not only students, but all homeowners and renters here in Fredericton. What is your solution?
Well, in World War II, when we needed a lot of housing, the federal government stepped up with Wartime Housing Limited. And in Fredericton we have, and all across the country, those small Dobie houses, right? That was a federal government initiative. Here, now that we're coming out of COVID and we've got a similar housing crisis, I'd say that the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation should take a more proactive approach, look at the model that we saw with wartime housing. If we can plan for war, maybe we can plan for post-COVID when it comes to addressing the needs, because people's rent, I was talking to someone this morning at the market, his rent has gone up 60%, and he's on a fixed income, and he had tears in his eyes asking me how I could help. He said, I want to vote for you, how can you help me? We've got to get affordable housing for people who are facing these dire crises, and that has to be a priority for the federal government.
It's supply and demand. When the market dictates a lot of the prices that we see, even groceries, housing. So on the housing side, there's not enough supply. So we're committing to building, I think, 1 million houses in the first few years of our mandate. We need to make sure that my kids all live on their own, but they all have multiple roommates because they know that they can't afford to live on their own. They're students, they're working part-time, and they're going to school, and they feel it. I want them to be able to afford a home at some point in their lives, and right now, without any available housing from low income on up, I don't see how that's going to change until we start to really increase the supply.
With an election headed quickly upon them and voters not sure which way to turn, this race is anyone's guess.
I don't think I would venture a prediction. I can venture a guess, and the guess is that Jenica Atwin will have difficulty bringing all of those Green voters over to her now as a Liberal. I would say all the Liberal voters from 2019 will probably stay Liberal, but she needs them and more, and so that'll be the difficult question. And so that puts the race into uncharted territory. I think it's very hard to call. And compounding it is that the Greens have selected a very serious, credible candidate to run against her. So the Greens have not given up, and there is someone very worthwhile voting for those Green voters who voted for Atwin in 2019.
This is a very Green riding in the sense that not only is it a small G Green riding, but people have come to appreciate what it means having a Green representative in a House of Assembly, whether it's the legislature or Parliament. And that was reflected, of course, when Jenica Atwin was elected as a Green in 2019.
I don't think there'll be much change in the government. I think I see a minority government, possibly Liberal, maybe Conservative. It could go either way.
It would be safe to say it could go any way here in Fredericton, with so much at play here and so much at stake.